Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. Today it's Tag Tuesday and I'm going to be doing the Bookish A to Z tag, hot or not tag, and that's created by Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, and I was tagged by Greg. Stay tuned. Okay, so the introduction to this tag, what is written here is it says you need to try to be fast and on topic. There can always be exceptions and it depends, explanations, but go for the gut reaction to the prompt in general. And terms like pick either hot or not. Okay, so let's start with A. A is audiobooks. Now all of these are related to reading. And I'm going not, simply because I don't have any audiobooks. I don't do audiobooks. This might change in the future, but at the moment I just like to read directly what I'm reading. And I think also that sometimes my idea is that audiobooks stuff might get lost in translation, or the fact that you're hearing it through another voice. So I just don't do audiobooks at this time. So that is a not. B is Bildungsroman, dealing with a person's formative years, spiritual education. So in other words, this is coming of age. And I absolutely love coming of age stories. I've read so many of them, so that is a definite hot for me. C, children's books. Not. I'm looking at the reading that I'm doing right now. I'm looking at my life now as it is. Obviously I loved children's books when I was younger, but right now not. D is digital. That is very much a hot. And that's because I love my Kindle. It's indispensable. I get titles from my Kindle that I can't get from my bookstores here in South Africa. So I absolutely love my Kindle. That's very hot. E is experimental. And I think this depends. It's mostly not for me. I think of a book called House of Leaves that I've mentioned on my channel that I DNF'd. I suppose that you would call that experimental, where there's a story within a story. But yeah, I don't tend to read them. I think Dracula might be kind of experimental with epistolary, whatever, the letters and everything else. But for most of the time I say not. Right, F is fantasy, most definitely hot. Even though I don't read so much fantasy anymore on my horror channel, I still love it. And it was still my gateway to reading, so I'm always open to reading another fantasy. So that is most definitely hot. Next one, G, graphic novel. Not. Not because I don't want to find and read graphic novels, but simply because I can't afford them and you can't find them where I live. So that is most definitely a not. H is horror. Horror. My channel is horror, so horror is so hot right now. This is a big hot for me. I is inspirational. That is a not. I'm not really into kind of self-help books or guides to make you a better person. For whatever reason, I don't really gravitate towards those kind of books, so that is a not. J is for journalism. Now I really should be reading more newspaper articles, reading about current affairs, hearing what journalists have to say, but I think most of it is freaking lies anyway, and in our country it's kind of skewed towards the government, and yeah, I'm more into kind of escapism fiction, so I'll say not for journalism. K is kitsch and has a popular or sentimental appeal. Now from what I understand by kitsch, I had to kind of look this up a bit, it means it's like tacky and overly sentimental, sometimes in bad taste, and I suppose it can appeal to the correct audience, but yeah, I'm not really interested in that, so that is a not for me. L is library. Now this is coming as a surprise. We don't have a library here. So in terms of going to the library, finding books, even audiobooks, we don't have a library. So it has to be a not for me. If I talk about my own library, I think that's kind of hot. But I assume that this is meaning a library that you go to. So it's a not for me. M is mystery. I would say that is hot. But I liked my mystery to be kind of sort of combined with a bit of horror, a bit of crime, and kind of whodunit. I enjoy mysteries. That is definitely a hot for me. N is non-fiction. Once again, that depends. When it comes to reading history of world wars or history of war, especially World War II, and also African wildlife and that kind of thing, then it's definitely a hot. So it kind of does depend. A lot of non-fiction I avoid, but there are certain topics and subjects that I like to read about. Then we have O for Omnibus. Not. I have one collection of Graham Masterton stories, novels in one omnibus, but I far prefer individual things of fiction that I can collect. So no, I'm not really into an omnibus sort of thing. Not. P is for poetry. Surprisingly not. I try to get into a bit of horror poetry every now and then, but yeah, it doesn't really have the same appeal as fiction. So at the moment not, although I will keep trying and looking at some nice horror poetry that's read by people on booktube, but it's not for me. Q is quest, where the protagonist goes on a physical or spiritual journey or quest. Now this is very strongly related to fantasy and even some horror, like if you look at The Talisman by Stephen King. And yeah, I love that idea of going on a quest and going in search of something and finding something, taking a journey. I like those kind of books, so that's hot for me. R is for romance. Sorry, not. I've tried one romance, I'm really not into it. I find it kind of cheesy, so that's not something that I read, so that's not. S is for science fiction. It's getting hotter and hotter for me. I'm really enjoying what I've read, and I plan to read a lot more science fiction in future, so that is definitely a hot for me. T is for translation. Books translated from one language to another. That is kind of hot for me. You know, the horror titles. I've just recently read, I think she's a Spanish author, where I read that book, 10 Days of Flesh, and I think that was translated. Not entirely sure, but I think so. And there are some Japanese horror novels that I've read that have obviously been translated. So I'll go hot with that. U is for Übermensch, the Superman, an extraordinary human character who can do just about anything, everything. And it also depends. A sort of a superhuman character in a novel can be quite exciting, but it all depends on what the novel's all about. But I'll go hot. It can be kind of fun reading about a character that can do anything. Okay, V is for Victorian Literature from 1837 to 1901. In other words, real classics. I have to be honest with myself, I don't really read those kind of classics anymore, so I would have to say not. I mean, there are some great horror classics, but no, I normally, if I think about a horror classic, I will go with something like The Omen, or what's it, Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho, or something like that. So I would go with something more in the 1960s, 70s, not going back as far as 1800s, 1900s. So I would say not. Westerns, not, but I'm hoping that by the end of the year that's going to change. A lot of my book hauls, I've bought westerns, bought some Louis L'Amour, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into them. So I'm hoping that's going to change by the end of the year. But if I look at myself right now, I've hardly read anything. Unless maybe if you think about the Gunslinger from the Dark Tower series, that's kind of a Western hybrid fantasy, horror, post-apocalyptic thing. But otherwise, yeah, not. I haven't read enough to make a statement of hot. X is X-rated, and I suppose that's talking about kind of erotic fiction, sexually naughty fiction. Yeah, no, the idea of naughty fiction does appeal to me, but sometimes sex scenes are so badly written, and in erotic novels, I'm pretty sure they kind of cringe. I haven't really given myself a chance with that. I'm not really interested in that. It sort of sits in the same thing as fantasy, so I'm going to go not. Why young adult? I say it's hot because there are a lot of young adult novels that I own, that I've read, that are actually pretty awesome. As I said, Coraline, The Graveyard Book is some by Clive Barker as well, and I read one or two this year from other authors that I actually really enjoyed. So I'm open to it, but I suppose it depends. The ones that I've read I've really enjoyed, so I'm going to go hot with that. And finally, Z is Zeitgeist. Sorry, my German is not so good. Spirit or mood of the times. I suppose that's keeping up with current affairs, what I understand, or similar to journalism maybe, just keeping up with what's happening in the world around you. I'd say not. And I think also to where I live, South Africa, everything's a bit of a mess right now, and I'd rather go with escapism, with fiction, or maybe like looking at some world wars and stuff like that. So that would be not for me. Okay everyone, so that's my A to Z hot or not tag. Thanks to Greg for tagging me, and I'm going to tag a few people. I'm not sure if you've been tagged already. Roll this over, but I'm going to tag quite a few people. Happy Horns Library, Angel Can't Read, Sin's Book Nook, Big L Does Booktube, Alex Unabridged, and Ed Lewis Reviews. So I know he always loves his tags. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Leave a comment down below if you were surprised by any of my responses. Take care of yourselves, keep those pages turning, and cheers.